All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Stu Seltzer, and it's my pleasure to be here to talk about licensing. And here's a quick agenda. I'm going to talk for 15 minutes. I have my clock right here. I'm going to give a quick overview on the basics of licensing, and then we're going to get into we're going to call up our esteemed panelists and have a real discussion with three awesome panelists who are here in the real world doing licensing deals day and night with amazing experience as well. So just to get a sense of who's in the room, how many people here would consider themselves licensors, brand owners? Okay, all right, maybe a third. How many would consider themselves licensees, potential licensees, manufacturers, people who are making the product? Okay, about, you just put your hands up. Yeah, about another 20%. How many people here are retailers? The big important part of the process as well. And how many lawyers or finance or others or spies or who knows what? All right, good. Well, welcome everybody. And let's see, just to see the slides here. Okay, good. And we're off. You saw the agenda. So quick background on myself. I've been in the licensing industry since 1991 now. My first job in licensing was working in fashion at Yves Saint Laurent. Yves Saint Laurent at the time was alive and well, making dresses that sold for between $5,000 to $10,000 each. And everything else we did was licensed. And I had the privilege to work there for a number of years. And the first deal I ever did was working with Yves Saint Laurent to license his brand to Cartier to make her jewelry. The second deal I did was to license out that brand to Luxottica to make the eyewear. At the end, we had about 18 deals for small leather goods and shoes, and each deal was huge, global, sold in 60-plus countries, but it generated all the revenue, the majority of the revenue for the company. I then had the opportunity to work at Warner Brothers on the Batman brand and worked through 2 of their movies for a number of years. And to put it in perspective, working at Warner Brothers on the Batman brand, we had 450 different licensing partners just for Batman. At the time, there was another 300 just for Harry Potter and others for Looney Tunes. But it was everything, toys, video games, trading cards, you name it. And just to contrast that with the 18 in the fashion world. And then started this company that I'm at today, Seltzer Licensing Group. We are a global licensing agency based here in LA, as well as in New York City, where I'm based in New York City, working with a lot of corporate brands, food brands, entertainment brands, and nonprofit brands. And you'll see some case studies of some of our work as we move along. The other thing I want to share is that for the past 21 years, I've been an adjunct professor at New York University, teaching a class on brand licensing. Just had our midterm this past Monday, and now their spring break starts, so they're all happy. But you now have the privilege of me taking 15 weeks of coursework, condensing it into 15 minutes of some highlights on brand licensing. And I'm going to start with this slide, which is the first slide and the first image that the students at NYU see on the first day of class. It's your basic marketing 101 pyramid. The goal of all marketing is to get your customers, move them up the pyramid so they become, they try your product, they like it, they become your committed customers, your loyalists, and your best customers because their brand affinity goes up. And these customers at the top become, quote, fans of your brand. And once they're fans of your brand, that's when they're going to buy other products and services with your brand on it. And that's true whether it's a LA Dodgers jersey, whether it's a Batman lunchbox, or perhaps it's a SpongeBob popsicle ice pop. These are the diehard fans that love those brands. So what is licensing? I'm going to just share a basic example that I show. It's about Bob. He's selling black t-shirt. He's got these nice t-shirts, selling okay, but wants to get a growth spurt, wants to spike his sales. And you heard about this thing called licensing and this property Batman that everybody wants, and he licenses in the brand Batman, pays a royalty to the brand owner, in this case is Warner Brothers, and puts it on his shirt, and what happens? Sales go up. He gets a nice spike in sales. All those Batman fans go out and buy his shirt. He pays a nice big fat check back to royalty, and they all live happily ever after. And that is just a very simple version of licensing. But here we are at Expo West at a food show, so let's talk about food. And this works with food too. There's a company that was on display here years ago called Signature Brands, part of the Hero Group, a German company. And they had a nice hot fudge product, and they were looking to spike their sales. So they licensed in the #1 brand in ice cream, the #1 vanilla, the #1 chocolate, and #1 ice cream brand in America, which is Breyers. And they licensed that in, they redesigned their package, they met all the needs of Breyers, and they launched this awesome product of Breyers hot fudge, and even at the bottom, there's no high fructose corn syrup and things like that, and they had a nice success with it. And again, just a great little story about licensing. All right, so I think it's important that when we're talking about licensing for you to know who the big players are. So License Global magazine that puts on the Licensing Expo, which is this coming May in Las Vegas, if anybody's interested in learning more and experiencing the license marketplace of the world. It's the biggest show in the world on licensing. They put out a chart of the top 150 licensing companies, 150 companies based on how much revenue they generate. And I took just the top 20 and put them on this page. Can anybody here, not those in the front row, but anybody here guess who would be on this list? Anybody take a guess? Yes. Disney. And I have it programmed because there's always somebody that says Disney. So yes, Disney is #1. Disney has been #1 ever since this chart was created 30 years ago. And they were #1 before they bought Marvel in 2008. And they were even before they bought Star Wars in 2012. But yes, Disney has been setting the standards and clearly outweighs all of the others. Anybody else? Yes. NFL is on there. It's not any other entertainment companies. Yes. Nickelodeon, which is now part of Paramount, and we're so lucky to have an esteemed executive from there to talk later to us. So yes, these are the other entertainment brands on the top 20. And I see people taking pictures of these slides. If anybody wants this entire presentation, just come after and give me your business card or give it to Jahan. Just wave Jahan, who's working on my team, or he's in the back, and you will get the full PDF of all these slides. So these are all the entertainment brands. What other brands are out there? I just clicked, so you see some corporate brands on this list. And you'll see, but on the entertainment, Pokemon, Warner Brothers with DC Comics, Superman, Batman, and Hasbro, and of course, Barbie by Mattel, and so forth. Any others that you might want to guess? You said NFL, and the others are, believe it or not, NFL this year is down to like 22. NBA is 28, and Major League Baseball is on there too, also in the 20s. They didn't make the top 20, but you could see a lot of corporate brands, industrial brands, and so forth. But what about food brands? The next slide, I took all the top food brands that are on there. And anybody want to take a guess? Who would be #1 food brand licensing out their brand? And you're going to learn more about them later, and that would be Hershey comes in at number 27. It's Hershey 27, and you'll learn about them. They have about 150 different licensing partners. Other food brands in the candy area, you'll see Perfetti Van Mel with Airheads and Chupa Chups, and Jelly Belly, Mars. Other food brands that are doing a lot of licensing include Dr. Pepper, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, even Jim Beam. Restaurant brands are on there. And I'm just showing you some of the top. There are, I would say, at least 50 restaurant brands that are doing licensing. They don't all make the top 150, but there's a lot. So that gives you a sense of who the big players are. All right, so now let's take a look. We did some analysis on this, just so you understand who is doing licensing. And we said, all right, where are these companies coming from? We looked at the whole full list of 150, and we found that the majority are entertainment. You know, as you saw, Disney and Warner Brothers and Universal. But what was interesting is that corporate brands are #2. Corporate brand, including these food brands, come in at #2. There is so much activity, so much licensing going on there. It's more than sports. It's more than fashion. So that's the key takeaway I wanted to share. The other thing is this. There was a research study done with the top 150 companies a few years ago that asked one question. Why are you licensing your brand? What is your goal? And anybody want to take a guess what the answer was? What was the answer when they said, why are you licensing your brand? What do you think, those licensors in the room, what is your goal for licensing? Revenue. Somebody said revenue. Yes, it's all about the money. But yes, they're licensing the brand. It's a great business. They have this very famous brand. Let's license it out and collect revenue. The big reveal on this research is that more than half of these companies are doing licensing because it's beyond money. It's not about the money. It's about the brand awareness. It's about the brand extension. It's about protecting your trademark. So that was the key takeaway also, just to understand, if you're here, sitting here thinking, oh, I want to license in a brand, I better know what the goals are of this company. Is it just money, or maybe it is awareness that we can help them achieve? All right, so I'm going to just deep dive for a second about 3 key reasons why these companies are licensing out. Number 1, they're doing it to drive revenue. And one example you'll hear more about is SpongeBob, owned by Nickelodeon, part of Paramount Pictures and so forth. They are generating tremendous revenue by licensing out the popular SpongeBob character, in this case, to Kraft Foods. Next example is for brand awareness. I have friends who are working with Jack Daniels, and they're licensing out Jack Daniels, having a lot of fun doing it, doing big jobs, especially with their sauce, especially with the candy. They love getting those young kids get that acquired taste of Jack Daniels while they're young. So this is a real product. But it is all about the brand awareness for them. But it's also about the mission. Some companies want to support the mission. And you'll hear more from Fabiana about what's going on at Newman's Own. They're here right at the top where it says 100% of the profits are for the kids, to help the kids. We work on behalf of the Red Cross, and we have been licensing out their brand to many companies, from smoke detectors to first aid kits to hand sanitizer. One on display at this show is Boost Oxygen in the North Hall, where they have the license for a mini can of oxygen. And again, the core there is to support the brand and really drive the mission of the Red Cross. So all the revenue, royalty revenue, goes to helping those in need. All right, I'm going to show you a quick video about the power of some of these brands.
First, we asked 3- and 4-year-olds to choose between a cupcake with the American flag and one with a familiar cartoon character.
This cupcake or this cupcake? You think it tastes better than this one?
Yeah,
Why do you like that one better?
because it's Spider-Man.
Almost all the kids picked a character over the red, white, and blue. So we upped the ante. We asked these preschoolers to choose between a cupcake and a banana. This time we recruited Scooby and Shrek to pitch the fruit.
There's banana.
Most went with what Shrek and company seemed to endorse.
So maybe licensing is the solution to childhood obesity, right? All right, here's a part 2 to this.
Finally, to see just how far these characters could sway kids, we asked what would they rather have for breakfast, a banana or a rock? We decorated the rock this time.
Which would you rather have for breakfast? For breakfast.
This one.
For breakfast.
This one.
An overwhelming majority went straight for the rock.
Yeah, so the power of these brands is tremendous, especially towards kids. So now the next 3 minutes are really focused on manufacturers in the room. If you're thinking of licensing in a brand to boost your sales or to get other benefits, this is for you. We're going to look at 4 reasons why companies are licensing in brands. Number 1, it's to boost the sales. Popsicle is making, basic popsicle, but they wanted to license in a brand to spike their sales, and they created the SpongeBob Ice Pop, which turns out to be one of the best sellers in the country of these face pieces, and it's really to drive revenue. Another reason licensees do it is to enhance credibility. And in this case, there's a generic pizza out there, but why have generic frozen pizza when you can license in a restaurant And actually, Nestle licensed in the California Pizza Kitchen brand, and it's one of the top sellers in grocery by using the licensed brand of California Pizza Kitchen. Another is, anybody here from Minnesota? Anybody know this brand? You do, right? Gedney? Anybody else hear of Gedney? Nobody has, because Gedney is based in Minnesota, and they're a huge company in Minnesota. But outside Minnesota, nobody knows them. They don't do marketing outside of it. So they needed a name to sell pickles nationwide. And that's why we worked on a deal with them to license the Del Monte brand. And they licensed in Del Monte because it helped them open up these national accounts. Because the Gedney brand was great in Minnesota, but that's about it. And then there's others. I saw somebody with flour on their badge, but we worked on behalf of FTD Flowers, and they wanted to reach a new demographic. They thought their demographic was getting too old. They wanted to reach the 20-year-olds. So we licensed a brand for them, Vera Wang, really to help generate interest and excitement around flowers for the 20-year-olds, and almost created a whole new business. All right, last thing I'm going to do is leave you with what I call my 3 key principles for licensing. Number 1 is that licensing can make a good product great. And in the example here is Pirate's Booty. They had a good product. It was a good, crunchy, really good cheddar popcorn product. But adding SpongeBob made this a great product. This product flew off the shelves, broke through all the clutter in the grocery stores, became an awesome product, and so forth. One thing on the side, licensing cannot make a bad product good, just so you, and we could tell stories about that later. All right, number 2 is that licensing provides a sustainable competitive advantage. One of my favorite business school books is called Competitive Advantage by Michael Porter, a Harvard Business School professor, and it's all about how the goal of business is to come up with your differentiation, come up with your competitive advantage, and hang on to that. And I'm here to say that licensing could be your competitive advantage. One example here is that Unilever, and Bentley will share stories later, is the exclusive licensee for Hershey's for the ice cream category. So all of these Reese's example, all the Reese's ice creams you see out there are exclusively Unilever, and nobody else can use that brand. So it is a competitive advantage. And third to share is that licensing is risky, and it's all about taking calculated risks. And 2 years ago, the licensors, the people at Mattel who were selling the Barbie brand, were at this show and many other shows, and they were out there trying to sell the Barbie brands. Oh, guess what? Big hot movie's coming up. And what do you think people said? They said, not for me, no thanks. Coke, nah, Coke's not interested. Pepsi's not interested. You know, we know Barbie, it's been around forever. The movie's not gonna do anything. But it's a risk. So luckily for this company that's exhibiting at the show, they took the risk called Swoon. And they created the Barbie Swoon soda, and they sold out, became the hit because they took the risk. So all I'm here to say is that licensing is risky, and it's really about figuring out how to mitigate those risks. And just remember that doing nothing is also a risk. So that is my quick little overview on licensing. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take the next 2 minutes. I'm going to call my panelists up here. In those 2 minutes, I want you to turn to your neighbor, exchange business cards, get at least 3 or 4 contacts while we're bringing our panelists up there, and ask them if they're a licensee, a licensor, and so forth. So guys, go to it, and panelists, come on up. Front. Hear me? All right, we are ready to go. All right. So, welcome everybody. And as you can see, we have three esteemed guests here who are on the front lines of licensing. And I'm going to start with the first question for each panelist, which is, instead of me doing a whole intro, I'm going to ask each one to kind of share their current role and also their career path. And I'll start, Priya, with you, and we'll go down the line.
Thank you, Stu, and thank you for inviting me to this. This is exciting. I specifically love this show as well. I am Priya Mukherjee, currently work at Paramount, where I'm responsible for business development and licensing within sort of the hard lines category that includes, toys, food, specifically, but packaged goods, CPG, seasonal, and QSRs. You're probably familiar with a lot of our brands: SpongeBob, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Yellowstone, Paw Patrol, and so that's sort of what I do currently. I was at Disney prior to that in a similar capacity in consumer products licensing. Previous to that, I was at General Mills, led several roles there, specifically brand management and sales, and I worked for a few retailers prior to that. So my whole career has been in consumer products.
Great. Well, welcome, Priya. All right. All right, Bentley.
Good morning. Bentley King, Stu, thanks for having us. I am currently the head of marketing operations for Unilever's U.S. ice cream business. Hopefully you know some of these brands. Breyers, Klondike, Popsicle, Good Humor, Magnum, Talenti, list goes on. And I oversee our day-to-day operations, effectively the delivery of our go-to-market plans. That includes everything from our paid, owned, and earned activities, as well as our consumer promotions, our in-store shopper marketing, all the kind of day-to-day operations, effectively, of how the brand shows up for consumers and you all. I've been at Unilever for about 17 years, so I've worked in a number of different categories. A little bit of a peek at my journey. It started on the advertising side, so I started in the agency side. Worked for a couple global advertising agencies across a number of different categories. Spirits, for example, I worked on the Diageo business, and also Unilever. That's where I got introduced to Unilever as a corporate entity. I spent some time at L'Oreal, and then I moved over to Unilever, as I said, where I've been for 17 years, and had the pleasure of working on a lot of different brands in our portfolio, from Hellmann's Mayonnaise to Degree Deodorant, Knorr, rice and pasta sides, and bouillon cubes, and it's been a wonderful journey, and again, it's the chance to be stewards of many different brands, I think, is what makes this whole journey fun.
Great, thank you. And I just realized I had some other slides of Priya, if you want to just walk through some of the images of your brands.
Absolutely. So this is a great example of, so Paw Patrol is such a powerhouse preschool franchise, and we want to be thoughtful in how we license that out. So we partnered with Dannon against Danimals. Extremely successful execution. We essentially grew the category for them. So that's a great example of licensing.
Yeah, I'm just showing kind of the brands that you touch, and
mac and cheese, yeah, Kraft. And this is a great example, actually. This came about through consumer request online. They wanted to see Kraft mac and cheese. They wanted to see Kraft mac and cheese bring back SpongeBob, and so that's how we sort of did that execution. Great. And then of course Popsicle. In Yellowstone, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit.
Okay, we'll talk about it later. All right, good. So welcome Bentley, and now let's turn and introduce Fabiana Gill.
Thank you, Sue, for having me here. I'm Fabiana Gill. I lead the licensing and business development function at Newman's Own. On the licensing side, I'm tasked to expand the Newman's Own brand into other food and beverage categories. And on the business development side, I actually expand the footprint in areas where our own food company, they don't manage directly, like food service is under my responsibility, and international expansion as well, which we do through licensing. So as far as my career path, I started my career in food and beverage marketing. I had no idea what licensing was, didn't even know that it was a career path, to be honest. until Disney hired me to convert their food portfolio into healthier food portfolio. So I spent 15 years there, actually shared time with Priya here. And everything I know about licensing I learned from Disney, but 2 years ago, I actually followed my heart and went to like a true purpose-driven brand that is Newman's Own. And I'm very excited about, again, driving and generating impact there.
Great. Well, welcome. Welcome, Fabiana and Bentley. And now, so I have a few questions, and then if we have a mic, I don't know, Kelly, if you can help, we can even take audience questions. So we will, I have about 5 questions that we'll start with, and then we will open it up. All right. So first one is really for Bentley, and people might be, licensors in the room might be thinking, oh, how can I pitch my brand to Unilever ice cream for Popsicle or Good Humor or Klondike or Breyers? What are the factors that you look at when you consider licensing in a brand for Unilever?
Sure. I'll run through 4 really quickly, and you will notice some consistency in some of the themes in Stu's opening slides. But first and foremost, it's about enhancing competitiveness. I don't need to tell you this as you walk down the aisles of the grocery store. It's an incredibly competitive category, and there's no shortage of options for consumers out there. So competitive, it is fiercely competitive out there. So that's where licensing can give us a boost. The second thing is, does it enhance our product credibility? We have iconic brands, as I named a few of them, but does it give us that extra boost from a product credentials perspective? And I think you see many examples. I can offer a peanut butter variant at Breyers to you, but of course, if it's a Reese's variant, you'll think very differently. You probably saw that in some of the videos. Third thing is, does it allow us to reach new strategic target audiences? And that's a really, really important thing. It's a race for households. That is really what we as marketers and business owners really are. It's all about household penetration. So if brands or if a license property can enable us to drive penetration with a new household, that's a really, really big, important win for us. I'd say the last one is all around brand equity. And for us, particularly for some of our brands, Breyers, let's take Breyers, about a 160-year-old brand. So, continue to stay relevant, top of mind, modern is really, really important. So can that property actually give us a boost from a relevance perspective, stay top of mind, not just what you thought the brand was when you were a kid, or when you were at a truck and ordering from a mobile vendor, a Good Humor truck, for example. But what is it today? I think those are the 4 different things that we tend to look at beyond just the economics of does this make business sense, which of course you would assume.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm going to now turn it around from the other side. Some of you in the audience might be manufacturers, potential licensees, and might be thinking, how do I get a SpongeBob license? Or how do I license in the Newman's Own brand? So let me start with Priya. If you can share, what are the factors you consider when you look at licensees and potential manufacturers to license your brands to?
Right. And then this goes back to, Stu, like you mentioned, we're tasked with building licensing revenue. We're trying to do it in a very thoughtful fashion. So, and working for an entertainment company, it starts with content, and then how do we bring some of those franchise brands into the everyday life of our fans? So that's essentially what we're doing when we sort of do product executions. There's really 2 ways we look at it, very simply. I mean, it's more complex. But one is it organic to the franchise, to the brand? And 2, is it on strategy for the category?
And
so what do I mean by
that? This is the organic trade show. I don't know if you threw out that word.
Yeah. If it organic to the franchise, meaning, for instance, last year we launched the movie Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem in August, in fall of last year, and I had to build a consumer products sort of business around turtles, and specifically within food. We wanted to launch pizza, which is so integral to the Turtles franchise. So we pitched the idea to actually Walmart, our key and biggest partner, and they loved the idea. So we launched about 5 Turtles branded SKUs at Walmart. One of them was an exclusive called Mac Attack. So even the name of the SKU sort of ties back to the brand. And also, we also look at trends. So mac and cheese is a trending sort of SKU or a dish, and so that's sort of how we look at it being integral to the brand. And it's done really well. The second part that I wanted to mention was, is it on strategy for the categories? So you showed us the Paw Patrol execution with Danimals. We want to be thoughtful when we do, especially preschool licensing. Ideally, within food, we want to be in the better for you space. So that's, does it tie into our strategy for food with preschool? And so that's sort of another way we look at it.
Great, thank you. Fabiana, anybody, for those who are thinking, how do I license in Newman's Own? What are the considerations you look for in a licensee?
Well, so as a food brand that licenses into other food and beverage categories, obviously, as you would do too, we have to do the due diligence of, is our brand elastic enough? Like what categories we want to go into, which categories are core, and which ones are we're going to license. So assuming you're within one of those categories that we consider it's a good extension, like anything that complements or is ancillary to our core categories, it's a good extension. So the way we would think about it is this product, can it fit the brand DNA, right? Our brand is all about no junk, good ingredients. Could we develop a product together that it's unique enough, but that can sustain the brand DNA of good quality ingredients? Is it going to the same target consumer we're trying to bring in, right? Are we targeting the same younger demographic that our brand now is bringing into our portfolio? And then from a category standpoint, it's all about, for the product, is it fitting the brand equity? But then I think the partner obviously is very important. If we are food brand licensing into food, we want to make sure that the partner also shares some of our same values, that we're looking into growth, right? We can do tests, we can do things, but we have to be very strategically aligned, because again, we're lending our brand to go into categories that are living next to our brand. So basically, you are really the champions of our brand as well. So those are the things we would look into.
All right. My next question is for each of you. If you can share an example of a really successful licensing partnership. And Fabiana, I'll start with you and we'll work down this way. Something that really stands out. Maybe it's Newman's Own, maybe it's from your past history with Star Wars or Disney Frozen.
Yeah. I'll do a current one, because I think it's just an example of more focusing on the relationship than the product. It's one of those examples that maybe haven't been brought up, but you can expand your international footprint through licensing. And one of our current successful relationships, we have a presence in Australia and the UK, but we do it through licensing. And our main licensee in Australia is not only growing constantly, they've been licensees for 6 to 10 years, so that's successful already, right? A long-term relationship. But they grow the category there, they become number 2, but they're also really the owners of the brand. We don't have marketing investment in that market, and through their marketing investment and commitment, they are the brand, they become the brand. They also tie to our local nonprofits and actually amplify that message. So that is a current successful relationship, because really those licensees have to act as our own brand.
Great.
I'll also pick up on a relationship theme, and you might notice we're not just picking specific items, and I think that's an important call out here, because products will come and go, but the relationships are really the foundation of kind of having a better chance at success. And right now we have a really strong strategic partnership with Hershey's as an example. You've seen a lot of images on Reese's, and the chance to bring the #1 candy brand to the ice cream aisle across a plethora of formats is a really, really huge business opportunity for both companies. And again, leveraging the technologies that we have internally, for example, and to do that in different formats is really, really exciting. Of course, there's a healthy tension as the stewards of these Hershey brands that we need to maintain the quality and the expectation of legions and legions of fans of Reese's or Hershey's or any of the brands under their portfolio, as an example. So I just wanted to share, I think the relationship element is really, really critical, as opposed to we had a real winner with this one item, which we have had many of those, but you also will have those balanced out with some that are more challenging, and maybe we'll talk about those in a second too.
Yeah. And do you, I don't know if you can, or do you want to share, example of that, of one of those relationships? Or?
You're saying with Beyond Hershey's or just in general?
I mean, what is it about the Hershey relationship that works so well?
Yeah, I think the nature of the collaboration around sort of product development and creation is really, really important. It's clearly an iterative process, and I think that is the nature of the beast, right? Essentially, it really is a funnel, is the point. And I think the relationship here is one where we have a shared vision, but of course, it's up to us and the crafters to deliver on that promise. And so I won't go too specifically at some of the stuff that we're working on, but the idea is that we have to align on what that shared consumer expectation is, if you will, and you can obviously imagine the bar and set the standard very, very high. But again, we collectively are working toward that, which is, I think, the energy that you're hearing from a relationship standpoint.
Great. All right. Priya?
Great. So, like I said before, it all starts with content. And some of you might have heard of a little show called Yellowstone, Paramount, with Paramount. It has been phenomenally successful, currently in season 5. And what Yellowstone has turned into is now pretty much a lifestyle brand. And my counterparts on Softlines, decided to launch products within the Softlines category in home and saw a lot of success. So we thought of sort of doing the same thing within the food category and tested it out with a partner of ours called Food Story Brand. They created, developed, marketed and promoted a line of products. It did really well, and we launched about, it started with seasonings, and then went into meat snacks. We launched about 30 different items in 8 categories, 60,000 points of distribution. It has, done really well, and what is interesting about that, this execution particularly is, licensing tends to be a kids-focused business. You have SpongeBob or Marvel, which is multi-generational. There's an adult aspect to it, but this one is 100% adult, and so you don't see, licensing be as successful within that demo. And it's so, a great example of a huge shout out to Food Story Brand, our partner, and taking a chance on this and executing this. You can see the whole line on eatyellowstone.com.
Are these some of the products?
These are the products,
okay.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. And why this was successful is because we reached new demo, we reached new, we were able to enter new categories, and then new classes of trade. So, that is something we're very proud of, and proud of our partnerships.
Great. All right, I have one last question, and then we're going to open it up. And this question is really turning it around. It's said that you can really learn a lot from your failures. So can each of you share kind of a licensing product, a licensing relationship, or some kind of failure you had as you went about your business? And maybe share some things you may have learned from that. And I'll start this with Priya first.
Sure. Like I said, we're tasked with building the licensing revenue. We always have to test and learn and look for trends. You have to be scrappy and resourceful, in this business. So we're always trying things. One of the reasons why we come to this show, to understand trends and where we can play. But not everything pans out like you hope it would. So one example, and again, recent example, with Turtles specifically, we partnered with a major retailer and decided to launch a Turtles branded yogurt, as a private label. And we had the flavor, we also had, in keeping with the brand, we wanted to make it lemon lime flavor, so it was sort of light green, and it sort of fit with the brand, the brand colors of Turtles. We were able to sell it in, but it didn't sell through because we found out kids didn't really love the lemon lime flavor. So, in retrospect, I guess shame on me because I was on the Yoplait brand at General Mills. I know what the top ranking SKUs are, but that was a long time ago. And trends change, but maybe we should have done some sort of consumer testing before we launched it. But that was sort of a recent example of something that
Great.
didn't pan out.
All right, thanks.
Sure, I think I'll pick an example and maybe just a couple takeaways from my perspective. A number of years ago, we launched with a big movie franchise. We had a sort of, a front of pack, call out that we thought would be a real slam dunk, but ultimately that really failed for a couple of reasons. One is that the product experience didn't really add something to the consumer. Said another way is just a property alone won't guarantee success. I don't care how big the property is. And the second key takeaway is that some of the other elements of the marketing mix, whether it's pricing, et cetera, there's so much that has to go right. So don't take it for granted, maybe is the point, which is licensing itself is a plus up. But again, the foundation of the product mix, the product delivery to the pricing, everything that you would assume would be there actually really can make or break the mix. So I think it's one where we probably didn't get all the elements right, didn't really delight the consumer from a product experience standpoint, and ultimately it didn't work because of that reason. But again, there's an element of risk. Priya mentioned it, Stu mentioned it earlier, for any of these, and you have to kind of do right by the mix as much as possible. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Fabiana?
Yeah, so I was reflecting on that, right? Like every product, licensing can make a good product great, but every product has to go through the same funnel you would do for anything, and some products fail, right? So I wanted to take it beyond the product and speak a little bit about the relationship or things that, as a licensor, what could go wrong. And I have an example, right? Stu mentioned that you can license your brand out for revenue and for brand awareness, for the mission. Well, we license our brand out for all of those reasons. And when you have a license portfolio and licensing portfolio, you have partnerships for a long time, and sometimes they represent a big chunk of your business. That was the case with McDonald's for us. We had a very long-term relationship with McDonald's when Newman's Own was the salad dressing exclusive for McDonald's. And it was a great symbiotic relationship. So it was successful by all means. But it's not that it failed, it's just that McDonald's decided to not do salads anymore in 2020. And they thought it would be temporary, then they tested, they continue, and guess what? They're out of salad. So I think the learning on our end is, and it's a basic one, but you can develop those long-term relationships, but also there are some strategic decisions that you don't manage yourself. So you're always having to rely on your partners, and sometimes you might hear on a change of decision in a shorter term that you would like. So you always have to also think, what are your options to continue in the business, right? And what are things that you can do to make sure that you maintain a solid business long term?
Great, thank you. Okay, so I'm now going to do two things. We're going to open it up to audience questions, and I still have a bunch I could share. At the same time, if you want to get the mic. At the same time, for those of you, I forgot to mention, we have a door prize. And if Jahan, if you can help, I don't have a fishbowl. If you want to collect business cards, we are raffling off for free a door prize of a Apple, I think it's Series 2 AirPods that we have. So drop your business card in, and when you put your card in, put an X on the back if you want the PDF of all the slides you saw this morning, and so forth. So, please.
Good morning. Good morning, my name is Krista Anderson, and I've been coming here for about 10 years, and we've never had this topic as far as I know, so thank you. It's incredibly insightful. And I just want to say one thing before I ask my question, but the three of you have the food system and the health of America in the palm of your hands with your stamp of approval and what brands you're partnering with. And this show is an innovative show of companies that are trying to change the food system. And Priya, I thank you so much for making that an initiative for your company. As a 2-time cancer survivor and given 3 months to live, I do blame our health system or our food system for a big part of that challenge in my life. And so you guys have this change. You are a powerhouse brand that can take emerging brands, the innovation of the future here today, and change America's health. So thank you for putting that on the forefront. I just want to ask a question. What do these contracts look like? What type of strategic contracts are they? Are they mostly sales-based, or how would you suggest companies like ours being able to set a type of contract up that's beneficial for both parties? I don't know if there's different types, so I'm curious to know more.
Maybe just explain a little more about your company, and then they can answer as if they're doing a real negotiation or something.
Okay, well, hopefully nobody tells the story after, but because I went through my cancer journey, I started my company 10 years ago. It's called Healthy on the Go. And we own and operate a healthy snack planogramming program of merchandising displays to help people stay healthy on the go, to help create a path to prevention. And they go into airports, gas stations, hospitals across the US. We just signed a contract with Premier, which manages about 80% of healthcare in the US, and we're now working with a big contract on airports. On the airport initiative, they're asking to take Healthy on the Go, put our merchandising displays in the stores, but also take the brand across beverage, OTC, and fresh food. So that would be more of a licensing agreement, and so I'm curious to know what kind of structure would that look like? Am I taking a % of sales or something else?
Well, maybe the question is, you have your product, your snack products, maybe it's, if they wanted to get one of your brands, what suggestions, how would you answer? I don't know. Priya, if you want to start.
Sure. It's pretty simple, really, and I think Stu alluded to it in the presentation. It's a royalty, percentage, because you're going to be using, one of our brands on your product. It's a royalty revenue, that royalty percentage that you would give us. And in addition to that, there's some sort of a financial commitment, and that's always negotiable, just so that we know, the manufacturer has skin in the game and they want to do this, because we technically wouldn't partner with someone else in the exact same category. So we're essentially blocking that for you. So, which is why we want some sort of a, payment, I guess, as part of the deal. And it's also time bound. So, it could be a 2-year term or a 1-year term. Essentially, that's what it is. I'm really simplifying it, but those are the key things.
I'm going to ask the next question because it may be triggered. We're here at the Natural Product Show. Can you share some of your quality control measures? Like now, one of these companies, they become a licensee. How do you make sure they are, that the products meet your standards? Or do you have any standards for your products? So, Fabiana.
I can.
Okay.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Yeah. Yes, we do have standards.
Right. Its standard is,
of course.
how much money are you going to pay? No. Just kidding. I
And
know.
actually, yes, safety and quality is a big part of the assessment that goes into partnering with somebody, right? Depending on how you perceive that, you do it very early on. If you're a food brand, you're very invested in making sure that those products deliver. So what we do at Newman's Own is the food company has already, a quality assessment team, and we have that team assess your facilities, your R&D capability, engage with somebody at the quality assurance level, and have an understanding of what processes are in place and have certain comfort on that. And then, as much as possible, we actually visit your facility and have just a chat to make sure that we know where our products are going to be manufactured. Yeah. And then, of course, if all that is good,
Bentley,
we're good to go.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you want to talk a little bit about standards? I know, like Ben & Jerry's, which is a Unilever brand, has strict, qualifications, such as they only are licensing out their brand to B Corps. But I know when you're looking at partners.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question's primarily a licensing out, but I think maybe from the flip side, kind of call it, if we're in the same boat, it's more of the qualifications that we would have to kind of, so I'd say it's a robust process that we have to, let's say, prove your credentials effectively. And again, this goes back to the point I was making around brand stewardship, right? these two are stewards of all the properties that they represent, for example, and so they want to make sure that they're signing on manufacturers that are up to that quality as standard. Otherwise, we will disappoint these legions of fans. So I guess, quality is a really big discussion here, because I would say in any food company, we have many, many different standards on that front. But in a licensing relationship, there's no doubt there's a courtship where you have to go through certain gates and, effectively to prove that out. Small or big company, I think, is maybe the point.
Good. All right. Another question from the audience. Yes. Hold on, the mic is coming. And Jahan, if you come up here for 1 sec, if you want to, again, drop your card in for the door prize, which will be called in about 5 minutes.
Hi, Dale Tipple. I've spent a little time at the Hershey Company, a little time at Blue Diamond and Almond Breeze, and touched licensing in a lot of different areas. So, Bentley, I guess you spent a little time with Ernie.
Ernie.
Yeah,
yes.
Among others. Anyway, I'd like your perspective on the life cycle of licenses. And Fabiana, I know that you had mentioned the life cycle as it relates to the Newman's Own brand with McDonald's, and it sounded like more of a strategic direction as the reason that kind of faded a bit. But can you provide some perspectives about, as a licensee, if I'm thinking about the life cycle, how much life do we have in this? And do I need to kind of pivot and innovate to keep that continuing to work? And as I look at the Unilever ice cream portfolio, I think that may be part of the strategy. But can you provide some perspectives on kind of the life cycle that a licensee might expect on a particular engagement?
Maybe I'll answer that in two different ways. One is licensing as a competitive asset, if you will, is becoming increasingly part of the game in certain categories. Ice cream, one of them. As the world of snacking merges and confectionery starts to move in, and there's a lot more blurring of the lines, and so licensing in general is not decreasing or decelerating in terms of being a competitive asset. It's actually increasing. So that's number one. Just to say, is licensing going to be around, right? Then we have to look at kind of how do you approach each individual relationship, if you will. And sure enough, partnerships, whether they're with Nickelodeon to a Hershey's, these are properties that are here to stay, right? Some of them are celebrating big anniversaries, as in the case of the SpongeBob, et cetera. So the intent is absolutely longer term life cycles, for sure. I think there's also a recognition that consumers are incredibly fickle. And even if the property exists for a long time, they move very, very quickly on to the next product. And that is why ice cream is a fun but intensely fierce category. It doesn't mean that you're no longer a SpongeBob fan, it just means that product may no longer delight you as it did 2 years ago. And that's a tricky situation when you're in a multi-year relationship, as an example. So we have to have a multi-year commitment to investment, because otherwise that partnership will erode over time. So I don't know if I'm answering it appropriately, but I want to say is licensing as a tactic is actually very, very important for us, and increasingly so. And then we want to find relationships or strategic relationships with partnerships and brand properties that are here to stay. But products will come and go, I think, is the nature of the game. And so our funnel needs to be really rich, even if we just as soon as you have a winner, you have three that are challenged in some respect. So it's just about keeping that engine fresh. I hope I answered your question.
But I wanted you to talk also, but the relationship between Bentley and Priya is amazing, because the SpongeBob relationship has been going on for more than 15 years.
Yep.
The Hershey is going on more than 30 years. So there is some, the life cycle of those are very long due to some of the innovation. Priya?
And what I wanted to add also, as being in media, licensing has become so competitive, and it's not just other media companies we look at. Gaming companies, toy companies, all of them are creating content. So it has become a very intensely competitive space. And so, Bentley, if I want to continue this partnership with SpongeBob and Unilever, which I want to, for as long as I can, it is important that I am, updating your team on what we have with SpongeBob, coming down for the next couple of years. This is the anniversary year, like you mentioned. Next year we have a movie, launching in December, and so it behooves us to, have content and touch points that are relevant to continue to have those partnerships, because we want to have, long-term partnerships.
Yeah.
To your question on, life cycle.
All right. So final question I'm going to put out here, and then we're going to draw the raffle. Any last questions? And good. Then I will wrap up by showing you a quick video, and then if Jahan and Kelly can come up here. And I'm just going to leave you with a quick little video on kind of a tongue-in-cheek on what is known as the biggest licensed property in the industry. Hold on. It's at the end here somewhere. Hold on. Oh my gosh. Maybe it's not here.
We don't have popsicle Reebok shoes to give away today.
One sec. Wait, can you, there should be a video at the way end. And if not, then that's not it. Okay. There it is. All right, here you go. Up.
But Yogan, what is this place? What is it that you do here? Merchandising. Merchandising? What's that? Merchandising. Come, I'll show you. Merchandising, merchandising, where the real money from the movie is made. Spaceballs the t-shirt. Spaceballs the coloring book. Spaceballs the lunchbox. Spaceballs the breakfast cereal. Spaceballs the flamethrower. That kids love this one.
So with that, I want to thank you all, but Kelly from License Global Magazine is going to come up here, pick out our door prize winner, and she is also in charge of a new program called Licensing Unlocked. And there is a, there it is. There is a QR code to learn more about that. So Kelly, come on up here, and she was going to pick out of the hat some blind winner, and we can read it off. It is, how do you pronounce that? Crunch Pack. The first name is Oscar Kroc. Come on up.
Oscar.
And with that, we have another 5 minutes or a couple minutes, so I want to thank our panelists. I want to thank you for all your attention and look forward to seeing you in the licensing industry. Thank you all. All right.
Awesome. Thank you.